Thanks for joining Lettera's webinar series. Today's webinar is titled How Your Lawyers Can Capture More Time and Bill for It Too. Should be an exciting session. Matt and I actually did a webinar last week to a smaller group, and Matt's son came in to give us an update on how potty training was going. And we believe today's session will be even more exciting than that was. So with that, we'll do quick introductions. I'll start and then hand it over to the other Matt, who is joining me today. So I'm Matt Miller. I have been with Lettera in some form for over 15 years or close to 15 years. I am currently the VP of Product Management for our drafting business unit, joined by Mr. Matt James. I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Matt. I am probably Matt beat me by about a year, a little bit more. So I've been with the organization for a significant amount of time. I currently oversee our go-to-market, so strategy for our technology offerings and making sure that it solves real business problems. I think I said it in a previous webinar, but I think Matt and I have a uniqueness to us in the sense that we have a pretty good domain expertise in regards to what it takes to create work product and draft within the Microsoft applications, and hopefully we can provide some of that evidence today as we educate during this webinar. So quickly, we thought it was worth speaking to how Lettera has restructured over the last year, but more so the last 5 years through M&A. I would assume, and again, I understand the amount of trouble I can get in doing something like that, but that the majority of the audience would consider us and know us from the drafting aspect. And that's where Matt and I sit, or we oversee that business unit inside of this organization. We'll focus the majority of our time on that. And while that might be, the core technology that we have for producing work product, or as we like to say, first draft to final delivery, and many of the M&A scenarios that we have fall into that, there are additional business units, much of which are SaaS-based, provide extensibility for our drafting solutions into workflows and processes related to transactional matters, so transaction management. You may have recently heard the Kira acquisition that falls inside of that, and so empowering that with some AI. The litigation space, where we have a product called Litigate that is focused around litigation management, so prep for going to trial, depositions, witness binders, and so forth, really providing a good level of organization and prep there. And then earlier, I think within this year, we acquired Foundation and built out a firm intelligence group, which has actually been the most active in our M&A as of recent, with things like Objective Manager and Clockimizer that have come in, but ultimately a good understanding from like a CRM perspective of the information that exists inside of the firm for pitch decks all the way through, analyzing the successes and value of the deals and closings and so forth that the firm has gone through. For us, there's a larger story here, which is the seamless flow of data, right? So we hear time and time again, we use a lot of these platforms, but we don't want to have to extract data from Transact or Kira to push it into, Foundation. We would love for that to seamlessly flow, as would we. That is a focal point of our roadmap as we get into 2022, making sure we don't impact what has already been set out to be achieved on behalf of our customers, but recognizing that there is a lot of repetitive tasks and there is a lot of redundancy to starting a new matter, and that kind of fills back into the drafting space. So if there's anything you take away from the way that we're structured here, it is to improve that flow of data. And while you may know us as a core drafting solution, I'm sure as you have more exposure to us and engage in conversation, you'll recognize that there's far more offerings that we provide, and that drafting really will become that extensibility into all of those spaces. So we, as we've mentioned multiple times, had recently done a webinar that was similar to the concept of this, which is how can we reduce, or how can we empower our lawyers to leverage technology and reduce write-offs or potentially write-downs. And ultimately what that is backed by is the fact that we understand the time that is spent drafting work product or redrafting, reading and editing and proofing and so forth. To top that off, we know that historically legal technology hasn't always empowered individuals, because it was more of a, we're going to dictate the way you work as opposed to complement and augment the way that a lawyer works. So we often find that adoption metrics come into play because it is very challenging to get someone to change their way and take a couple of extra clicks, even if it could benefit them in the future. So we know that IT struggles with maintaining all of these applications, constantly staying in this maintenance mode of keeping up with Microsoft or the DMS vendor, or making sure the 10 different providers that you have inside of Microsoft Office are not conflicting with one another. And in this world of continuous updates, it makes it very difficult for IT to keep that image and that desktop stable. So hopefully through some of the conversation that we have here and some of the data that we provide, you'll see that we're doing our part to help from an IT perspective reduce the overhead it takes to provide technology to lawyers, and then allow IT to shift their focus on innovation and empowering their lawyers to leverage some technology that isn't causing friction in their day-to-day. It actually helps them identify the risk in the way that they work and quickly solve that and move on.
All right, so to piggyback on what Matt was saying there, obviously we're big believers in technology helping our users be more efficient. Sometimes it can be a struggle to get them to use technology. We talk to our customers all the time, and can be upwards of 400 applications on those desktops are being managed within these legal departments that the users is trying to vie for that user's attention. Sometimes they just want to continue to do things the way they've been doing it because they feel like they don't have the time to learn something new. That's where we'll talk more about augmentation of their workflows. We're not looking to change anyone's workflow. We're just looking to enhance their workflows. So from a change management or training perspective, we'll try to keep that as low as possible with some of the stuff we look at. Another area we see as successful is providing data around the value of technology and just helping shine a light on continuing to shine a light on you're very busy in your day-to-day. You have pressures, you have time commitments and pressure on you. More and more work continues to pile up. There are ways to make yourselves more efficient, potentially less stressed, and more accurate in what you're doing. So we've pulled some data stats here that we think are impactful, that we think can help you folks on the phone who might be looking to implement software or just other software you might currently own to elevate that conversation with your user base. So some of this we pulled from some artificial lawyer articles from their September 2nd publication, and they were profiling a company called Xero, who does mobile metadata cleaning capabilities, and they had gone out
and predictive indexing and some of the stuff with like appropriate user recipient and so forth. Sorry.
No, that's good. We don't want to misrepresent Xero here. They're friends of ours. So they had gone out and talked about 110 different customers, and these are some of the key data points that Matt and I pulled out. So from a percentage of work week that they saw in that interview process that people were spending on non-billable work, at least 41.2% of the respondents said that they were spending 35% of their time on non-billable work, and 70% of the respondents were spending at least 20% of their time on that non-billable work. So pretty significant amount of time for people who already have to achieve a certain amount of billable hours. I don't know if you want to add anything to this slide, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, data and metrics are pretty powerful and great, but I think three things that I could just add a little bit of color to this. I think these numbers would be higher if people had more time to get to things like proofreading, things that are often excluded because you're trying to meet a deadline, right? So I think one, we should recognize a lot of the time allocated for these tasks do get truncated because we're working 100 miles per hour trying to meet these deadlines and client commitments. Secondly, if you do the math here, and I think this is a generous number, but we tend to hear that in order for fee earners to receive their yearly bonus, they're looking at billing upwards of 2,500 hours a year. You do the math here on where they're spending time on non-billable tasks just with this, and I'm sure there's a variety of other things, you're looking at 15-hour days. And I would assume I don't need to make comments to how big of a focus right now mental health and culture and work-life balance is. And the other piece that I was going to add here, which is kind of that, like the faux pas word of the last 5 years, but it's starting to make a lot of progress, is efficiency, right? When we talk about technology providing efficiency, it's not efficiency so that your lawyers are billing less. It's actually efficiency in the areas where this cannot be collected, right? This is what customers are not willing to pay for. This is what takes a significant amount of time, but is expected to just be part of the service offering for your clients. So providing efficiency in that non-billable or that work that gets written down or written off is really where I think technology can help in combination with people and process.
So if we take that, the non-billable piece, and we continue to drill down into it and look to see, well, what are the lawyers spending their time on? Again, some more data from our friends at Artificial Lawyer. We kind of broke this into 3 buckets here. And so finalizing documents, about 1 to 4 hours per week, is around 65% of their time on that type of work. For us, as we talk to our customers in terms of finalization, it's the little dotting the I's and crossing the T's work a lot of time. I'm looking for period, single space consistently, or period, double space consistently. Straight quotes and curly quotes are consistently used within the document. Those types of things, or consistent font, or maybe I need to build a table of contents. Those types of things are taking up 1 to 4 hours per week around finalizing the document. From a reviewing and proofreading perspective, 5 to 9 hours per week, trying to just better understand the deal specific terms in the document are as sound as possible and as accurate as possible. I generally say, like, if someone sends me a legal document, I don't always totally comprehend the language that's in there. It is complex legal language for me, a layman, but I will always pick up on the stuff that the final checks would have potentially, which someone might have missed in the final check process. My eye is more attuned to format and structure of the document. So equally, might be spending more time, but potentially in the eyes of the person who's receiving the document, some of those final checks are pretty critical, as those are the types of things there I might be more obvious to catch. And then last year from our 3 buckets is just drafting documents, either creating that first draft or finding that best content to use while drafting the document. About 5 to 9 hours per week, or about 52%, 53% is what we're seeing from some of the Artificial Lawyer stats. Matt, anything that you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I guess, in the amount of conversations that I've had, some quotes or some lines kind of stick out. So in the finalizing documents piece here, this is all about reputation, from reputation internally and externally, right? I've had a variety of folks who use technology or spend time to finalize the document and mention the fact that this is the first thing that will get pointed out to me by my senior partner, right? I spent 2 hours reviewing this, and within 30 seconds, they're pointing out mistakes that I had. The dotting of the I's, crossing of the T's, but placeholders or inconsistencies or things that just reputationally impact me, but also if it goes to my clients who understand that they are being billed for this, that can reputationally be damaging across the board and for the firm itself. I see reviewing and proofing is actually being about the intention, right? As I read for meaning through this, I need to make sure that I understand what I'm referencing. I'm doing that appropriately. The legal substance here is done right? So this is all about best representing your client. This is about ensuring no breach of confidentiality. These are things that need to be done when you're surfacing, what PII exists and so forth. And then that last piece, we talk about the drafting wheel and the emblem and the repetitive tasks that are required to produce work product. There is a variety of different ways to start. What isn't a starting point is a blank document, right? So the drafting of documents is often related to finding the right matter, relying on someone who has good deal recall, who can say, yes, this is probably the starting point that we should be using, trying to leverage maybe precedent that's available. And if none of that is easily workable, there is a significant amount of time that is spent to unwind prior work product, make it appropriate for the new matter. And if you're relying on things like Control F or find and replace, it's just perpetuating that finalizing documents problem or the reviewing and proofing. You're unlikely to catch every single aspect of that. And that can reputationally be damaging. That could negatively impact the overall deal. So it is very repetitive. And I think as we start thinking about ways that technology can help here, it's all about reducing the repetitive nature of that work, no matter how bespoke the practice. So the last quote I'll leave on this page is that I've worked with a variety of lawyers in litigation, especially, who say, I have a very, very bespoke practice. Technology doesn't make sense for me. I have to go through the process the way that I do. And I've had a variety of those innovation lawyers in litigation say, don't buy that. Even snowflakes have patterns, right? No matter how unique something is, there's still a lot of redundancy and patterns that are done, and technology can help augment that.
So in terms of piggyback on what Matt was just saying there around, we do hear a lot of our users still fighting the manual process. So we wanted to bring some what we'll call more data-backed or science-backed points that you can bring out here. So we call this F patterns and the cost of manual work. So some of you may be familiar with F patterns. If not, it's pretty interesting stuff. I'd encourage you to Google it after today's session. You'll see a bunch of images that are probably pretty impactful for the types of things we're doing, right? We have complex documents that needs very thorough reviews. And an F pattern is the way a person's eyes move across a page that is dense with text. And so what you'll see in those images on Google is our eyes have a tendency to look at headings and stay on the left side of the screen. So we had a quote or some data from Nielsen report we looked at, and about 80% of the time, their studies say about 80% of the time, our eyes are on the left side of the screen versus that 20% on the right. So we already know as Matt kind of did some quick math there and said our users, our fee earners are probably working 15 hours a day. That puts them well into the early morning hours. Their brains are already tired. Their eyes are already tired. Couple that with the tendency for our eyes to only look left on a dense screen and not look right. And that introduces potentially a significant amount of risk there in the reviewing and finalization processes or drafting that goes into these documents. So again, enhancing the user or augmenting the user with technology that never gets tired is what we're big proponents of. We're already doing this in our day-to-day lives. I have the stats here on the right, which is, in general, there's quite a few studies out there around just how our brains are really not built to sift through large data sets. And the most common example I usually bring up is global positioning systems or Google and Waze. My guess is today, tomorrow, at some point this week, you will bring out one of these GPS systems to help you navigate or to augment your driving experience. You still need to drive, but that GPS system is going to enhance the experience, help you reroute around traffic, or just best navigate to that final destination point. And the technology we're talking about here should be looked at in a very similar fashion, right? We're using these types of things in our day-to-day outside of work lives. Very much so we need to be encouraging folks to be using technology for work for the same types of reasons. Matt, anything you got here?
I would just correlate it back to reputation, right? This is peace of mind. It is not saying that you don't need to do the things that you do today. You don't need to read it. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to spend time on it. But it is leverage technology to give you peace of mind that you didn't miss everything and that reputationally you are going to be covered. That is a huge concern. And we know that based on the way people are working, as we talked about, reusing and duping and revising prior work products.
So we wanted to shift into showcasing a couple of products specifically in the reviewing, proofreading, and drafting spaces. Some of these you guys may be aware of, but we're going to showcase and kind of highlight a couple of things that we're about to release or that are in the process of being built and will be looking to be released as part of our end of year releases. So the first one we'll highlight here is Letserra Check. Matt's going to do a demo of it. What we're showcasing here on screen is Letserra Check and our Addin Manager. These applications are available in the market, and what they help our users do is proofread and repair documents. That is the objective that they were built for, and they're out there helping users do that today. Letserra Check, which hopefully the larger customer base is aware of, is us consolidating applications to continue to enhance and augment a very seamless user experience within the application. So previously, users had to know to go to Contract Companion to help with their proofreading needs, and DocX Tools Companion to help with some of their repairing needs, potentially even Best Authority to help with some of their table of authority needs. What Letserra Check does is focuses the user just around a single task pane user experience. So they can now just click that Analyze button that we see there in the top left-hand corner. That will open a single task pane and give them access to all of their proofreading and repairing needs within the document. Again, Matt will go through this specifically. He'll even kind of showcase our Addin Manager, which allows the user to create, take Letterra's applications and turn them into on-demand applications. And then we understand that users work slightly different ways. Some of our users love to have the task pane open as they proofread and repair documents. Some just like to work in line within the document, which the screenshot on the far right of my PowerPoint deck here is showcasing some new inline technologies we've got from our proofreading and repair.
Yeah, I'd say just before you hop off this real quickly, Matt, historically, I see lawyers' needs as often either going in the opposite direction or conflicting with IT's needs, right? Security is a common scenario there. This has really been our focus to say we can improve consolidation of technology from implementation and performance and ability to maintain it, as well as this user experience, right? A guided experience of multiple products where you don't need to know to use them in succession. So in that theme, that's kind of back to my point of reducing overhead where we can, which is we'll simplify what it takes to deploy this technology and have it available to your users. And it will actually drive adoption because that experience for them is more guided and more seamless. And we're always reducing friction along the way, right? I'm sure we're all pretty much familiar with the fact that lawyers often take the path of least resistance. So that is the direction that we're aimed with this.
So moving forward to something that not everybody might be aware of. So what I'm showcasing here is a Lettera Compare Web 0365 web application. So this allows our user base to use our comparison application from any device. If you can bring Word up, you can access this comparison app. So this allows people to compare from a Mac, from Word Online, from Word within Teams, from Word Standard Desktop. And from a proofreading perspective, a lot of times we hear comparison is part of that proofreading process. If most users are going to run a comparison to get that red line, but they're also using the application to understand what has changed, obviously within the document with track changes and those types of things. This allowing them to have access to that very valuable comparison and those changes that have occurred in the document from anywhere on any device. This will be coming out here as part of our Q3 release, which will be getting posted to the Customer Center on October 5th. But you'll see more and more extensions of our core desktop applications as web applications in the near future. That is a narrative we like, which is we want you to have available the desktop applications and certain features of those desktop applications available from anywhere on any device. The next screenshot I'm bringing up here is something we're currently working on. What I'll say is we're about to start an early access program. So if there's folks on the phone that are interested in what I'm about to tell you about this application, contact your sales representative, contact your customer success representative, tell them the Matts sent you, and we'd be happy to put you in and get you some early access to this application. So what you're looking at on screen is Lettera Review. And Lettera Review helps solve a complicated comparison workflow that is many to one. I, Matt Miller, am working on a document, and I've now sent it out to several of my colleagues, and they've all sent their track changes and feedback back to me. And I need to take all of that feedback and bring it into a new master file. So that's what Lettera Review will do. It will be part of our comparison story, but it is a new comparison application from Lettera. Currently in early access, will be available for general availability in December timeframe. I think Matt's gonna give a demonstration of it.
I'll be happy to show it. I think adding to this, right, it solves for a collaborative scenario. As we engage with our customer base, we're finding more and more use cases that it solves for. So that is obviously very informational to us, and we look to obtain that. The kind of theme and takeaway here that we hear, and I'm curious if someone else has a different term for this, or there's better nomenclature, but we tend to hear that the individual that would be using this is the one holding the pen, meaning that variety of people are making different suggestions and comments and language advising at the same point in time on the same particular version, and someone responsible, the individual holding the pen, has to go through and determine, are these conflicting? Which do we accept? Which do we reject? How do we take this to the next iteration? So that's where the use case will show it here momentarily.
So the last one I'll bring up on screen. I don't think we'll do a demonstration of it today, but this is our Create platform. So Lettera has been known to have template applications as well as content reuse applications, very similar to Letserra Check. We see the need to bring those capabilities together in a more user-friendly, better workflow experience as you create that document, being able to hand you off seamlessly into a content repository that's either firm approved, or where you're keeping your own personal content, or where your colleagues are sharing content to you. So Lettera Create is the future iteration. If you're familiar with Innova and Forte and Content Companion today, this is the future for those applications, a platform which seamlessly brings all of that together and enhances and augments the user drafting experience. This as well is in an early access program right now. If you're interested in getting your hands on this application early, we're interested in hearing from you. Again, reach out to your customer success representative or sales representative and tell them the Matt's sent you. For coming out of the deck, I'm going to hand it over to Matt, and we'll go into a couple demos of some of the things we just had screenshots up there.
Great. So let me go ahead and make sure I can share the appropriate screen. Some adjustments here. Okay, so we should be good here. We should be seeing the bond specialist document. The first thing that I'm going to speak to is that Lettera Compare web app. So on the home screen here, you'll see that I have had, from an IT management perspective, this deployed to my machine. It appears here on my home ribbon. In fact, you actually see a variety of technologies that we have that support workflows that are device agnostic and on that Office 365 web app architecture. Really, in order to engage the technology, as you would imagine, you click the button and you receive a task pane on the right-hand side. When this task pane loads, it will give me the ability to generate a comparison. Oh, and it looks like my single sign-on is going to pop on me. So real life experience here. Let me step through this real quickly. And what we'll see on the right-hand side is the opportunity to navigate to our original or modified. In this particular release, the DMS integration is not here. It will be coming. That is obviously a very important piece, understanding that that's the source of truth. The first option here is the ability to simply say, okay, I want to select the current document, and then the ability to browse both locally and to OneDrive. So I will quickly browse locally here. On my desktop, I have a set of documents, and I am going to pull in this demo letter version 1 as, and maybe doing it backwards here, but as the second piece here. And then with the ability to generate the comparison, what we'll find is that I do not need that technology, that local installation of the comparison on my particular machine. So again, this supports expanded workflows, mobile workflows, Mac workflows, Office 365 workflows. And I'll be presented with a variety of options to either download that file, save it back into OneDrive, DMS coming as we had mentioned, or leverage the ability to view it within a browser. So as this is coming up on a different screen, I will bring it up. But again, this speaks to the ability to leverage any device, being that all devices that have access to the internet have access to a browser. And what you'll see here is is a very similar workflow of being able to navigate through the changes. They'll present themselves. You can accept and reject those appropriately. You'll see a variety of output methods at the top, being able to print change pages and so forth. So again, this is extensibility to the comparison offering. And as we continuously have conversations about performance and weight of applications and the need to cover our lawyers as firms migrate to Microsoft 365, this architecture and technology is here and ready to be leveraged. So as Matt said, this will be available here shortly as part of the October 5th release. If we step back into Word, I wanted to show some of the things that we're doing from an IT perspective, benefits to consolidation of technology, but also to keep in mind that this does empower the end user. So what you are looking at right now is my Letserra Ribbon that is leveraging the Addin Manager. So think of it really as my console or my dashboard to be able to engage my technology. Now there's a variety of different ways that I can have the technology deploy or be presented to me when I launch Word, but I happen to be a fan of let's not have any add-ins launch. I would like to start up Word as quickly as possible. I'd like to shut it down as quickly as possible. And I'm a fan of not running into delays that are maybe unnecessary for my particular engagement or instance of Word. So that being said, through this add-in panel, I have the ability to enable the applications I want to through an on-demand model. So we had talked about Letserra Check. As I click on that Letserra Check button, it validates my licensing and then will provide me with the group of technology here on my ribbon. So I double clicked it, but I will go ahead and click check. We should see it expand here momentarily on the right-hand side. Wouldn't be a technology demo
if things didn't run.
Let's see if I can get the other ones too. I did just make a change. So the other ones are coming in. Let's see if I can get Letserra Check to validate. Beautiful. We will shift. Matt, I may ask you to pull it up and see if it's working on your end.
Yeah.
But I'll shift over to one other piece that I wanted to speak to, which was the review piece, and then we can come back to maybe why I'm not getting validated. So Matt had mentioned Letserra Review, a many to one versus the one to many that people may be accustomed to from a comparison perspective, allowing that person, that individual holding the pen to produce the latest and greatest version of all of the other collaborative comments, conflicting suggestions, and so forth. Couple ways to engage with it. I will simply use a drag and drop method. So we will drag and drop the files that I want to bring into the application. You will see that there is an opportunity for original and then those revised. So which is the original document and which of those documents contains revisions from a particular party, a particular individual. You will be able to see who that individual is. You can actually do renaming if it's actually more relevant to see a party name. You can see modified, and ultimately when you click on review, what this will do is bring all of those documents together in the view to the right-hand side, and then open the document for creating the latest and greatest. So I will move this up as it sits here on this screen. And what we'll see is as this receives the document changes, we'll have the ability to navigate through. And on the left-hand side, we'll see those areas of the document showing up and presenting itself. So I'll just quickly show here are all of the changes that are suggested in different paragraphs. Sometimes it's just one individual suggestion where you can accept or reject that. Other times there are multiple, or there could be potentially conflicting. So if we were to step down and maybe navigate through, so I'll navigate through these items down to the Dear Sirs area. And we'll see that in that particular area, there is conflicting changes that have been suggested. When an individual chooses to accept or reject one of those, it will lock the other two out. And then what we'll see is that it's made that appropriate change and show that it's been edited here on the left-hand side. So I've had a couple of folks that we've worked with say this to me is really like an ability to compare with almost a SharePoint type of view. But as you see here on the right-hand side, you have this control of all of the changes or all the suggestions that have come into play. And then as you navigate through that, you are building out the latest and greatest on the left-hand side, and full DMS integration applies there, the ability to increment those versions. And as you navigate, the two documents are connected in order to do so. So again, solving for a many-to-one type of result. We've heard many scenarios where maybe a document has progressed to a version, but we didn't get all of the input and the suggestions from a prior version from someone else. That also can support some of those use cases. Matt, I don't know if you have it ready. I'll hop back and see if it's decided to give me checks.
It's still thinking of validating. No, I do have it. Mine did validate me. I'm not sure. Can you pass me presenter rights?
I think Madeline will have to help us here.
There we go.
And I was just going to maybe showcase the final checks element of things that really bring together that reputational piece that we spoke to.
All right. So Matt and I were both using Letserra Addin Manager. Again, that's a new utility from us that moves the applications to more on demand. I've clicked check to now open Letserra Check, the ribbon interface I'll be using here. The analyze button is what folks are going to use 80–90% of the time to open that task pane on the right. If users do want to go to the full, like imagine if you had a button that says click here for more. That would be that's the general sense of these buttons. If I clicked on review, it would give me access to those the greater set of functionality. But largely, users just going to hit analyze. And on the right-hand side of the screen, if you are familiar with Contract Companion and Documents Tools Companion and have had those historically installed, what previously would have happened, I would have clicked Contract Companion, one task pane would have opened for all my proofreading needs, and then I had Documents Tools Companion, and another task pane sitting side by side would have opened for all my repairing needs. Now I've got everything centralized within a single task pane area. You can see Docx tools across the top, as well as the proofreading tiles along the bottom. We still allow for that flexibility here to turn certain tiles off to better create my own proofreading and repair experiences needed, as well as move the tiles around if you want, for example, names, dates, and et cetera in the first position. All of that is still possible with Letserra Check. Matt, was there a particular area of one of the tiles you wanted me to drive into?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always worth speaking to the risk assessment just because that drives the attention of an individual who's maybe trying to accomplish something in a truncated amount of time. But I also thought, Matt, if you click on the review button on the ribbon to show that it does expand the additional functionality. So we are being very conscious of real estate and so forth. There is also that final check button there. And that really is what we tend to hear as like a quick way to drive adoption in technology, because this is going to point out all those mistakes, right? So incorrect spacing, placeholders. If Matt, maybe you can even show how this does it in real time. If you were to put in maybe 3 characters of the same, like ZZZ or XXX or something like that to show as a placeholder, when this automatically updates, it will recognize many of the techniques that are used to show that there are placeholders in the document, and it will allow someone to quickly navigate to those areas, right? So highlighting, bracketed text, repeatable characters, a lot of those things that again are very reputational and we know are challenging because of the way that work product is being produced. This is just that last peace of mind. Let me run this. Let me make sure I've corrected everything that I need. And then when I send it either up the ladder or out the door, I'm not in concern of the fact that I may have forgotten to tie up a particular area of the document. So I think I think we're kind of right at the end of the webinar here. I do want to encourage the audience to ask questions here. Matt and I do know some of the commonly asked questions, so we can pause for a moment and we'd be more than happy to take any at real time. Otherwise, maybe there's a couple that we could hit on from our perspective.
So 2 questions did come in. I did respond to those individuals privately, but just so everybody has a chance to hear them, we'll go ahead and read them out. In reverse order, the first one was around Addin Manager, And can the end user utilize the manage button of Addin Manager to set particular add-ins to load when Word starts? The short answer of that is yes. So it is entirely configurable. Matt chose in his configuration, as well as my configuration, we chose to never load any of the applications on Word Startup. But if we wanted to have check always loaded, I could have either as an IT policy, I could have set that, or I can allow my users to manage that on their own. All I would have had to do is click the manage button, click check, and from that point forward, every time I launched Word, check would have been loaded and all my other Lettera applications would have been off until I clicked the button to turn them on.
Yeah, we do tend to see it always on for applications like document trailers and things that are needed. Another point of clarity that I think could be very relevant here is this is not limited to Lettera add-ins. So you actually can add in other applications from other vendors. This is a focus on improving the whole experience through Word. And while we may not be able to add them to our ribbon for another reason, we can absolutely load their ribbon and those components in the same method that we can do so here. So one other piece that reading these other questions are pretty difficult for me, but one other piece of this too is that this is not something that is readily available in our customer center. So it does require you working with us and reaching out to us. We're happy to provide it. We're happy to guide you through it. It's an easy setup, but we're not productizing it in that same fashion. So again, you can say the Matt sent you, you can reach out to one of us directly, but we'd be happy to work with you on that.
Yep. And then the other question was around a comparison product. So do you have a compare product that allows the user to compare against multiple other docs at the same time to find the closest match, not just compare one doc against one another and another. So I believe how I read that was how Matt was saying, what Matt was showing with Lettera Review, where it's a many to one, whereas Lettera Compare allows you to kick off multiple simultaneous comparisons. This application, what he just showed, was allowing you to say, all right, I just sent out this document to 5 people. It's the same document, but there's all sorts of different track changes going on and feedback going on. And now I need to see all of that, which he could see in his right screen on the green screen, and then approve as necessary across the different users what he likes and doesn't like, and merge that back into the single master.
Yep, I think I would agree. I think the output there, the goal of the output is getting one document that has all of those changes. Our workflow does require you to navigate through and determine which is the appropriate. But rather than speculate on that exact use case through a chat in the webinar, we'd be happy to get your hands on the application in this early access program and run it through, and we can validate those use cases.
Yep. A couple other questions. When will Addin Manager be available? It is available now. Is Addin Manager a separate license? It is not. If you are a Lettera customer, a drafting customer of Lettera's, it is available to you. You just need to contact your customer success rep or solutions engineer that you probably worked with during implementation to get access to it. There is a little configuration that needs to be done, nothing heavy lifting at all, and we'll walk you through that. There's just some choices you need to make there.
Yeah, I don't want to call it an interim solution, but I think that the market knows many of these applications are a little bit heavier in a weight perspective because of more legacy architecture and so forth. We are absolutely modernizing all of these. We are absolutely taking all of the technology and making sure that it is more lightweight and it is more capable and flexible. However, we recognize everybody has different update cycles. There's desire to move to latest and greatest. In certain circumstances, there's not. So we do really see this as being able to turn all of those legacy technologies into on-demand offerings. But you can expect, as our technology continuously evolves and takes advantage of the Office 365 web apps, that may become less and less of a concern. But again, as I have spoken to, it's not limited to our solution. So you may have a variety of other solutions that don't necessarily have that roadmap or that direction, and this could ultimately improve the performance of your Word application. Matt and I have actually worked with a couple of clients who are so excited about this that they've encouraged us to do the same in Outlook. So it is something that is, hopefully that we can get to by end of year here. But that's a good sign, I think.
One other question that just came in was around the necessity, if you do a comparison in our compare application, either Lettera compare or Lettera review, I think I'm getting this question right. Does the end user, the person I'm sending that comparison to need to have a Lettera comparison product? The answer is no. You could be sending it to somebody who is, marking up track changes in some G Suite document, or just using native Word to get their track changes. Once the document comes back, to get the many-to-one review, yes, you'll obviously need to have Lettera review at that point, but that is not a requirement. There's really not a requirement for any Lettera product. If Matt had proofread the document with Letserra Check, that doesn't mean that the person on the other end has to have Letserra Check. It would enhance that experience between the two users, but is by no means a requirement.
Yeah, I used to always say the recipient of that document doesn't know if you spent 8 clicks or 8 hours on it, right? So that's ultimately our goal. I think, ideal world, everybody owns this technology and collaboration is far easier, but we recognize that's not the case. So nothing is, the technology is perpetual technology, but that output is native to, its particular governing app. So Word, PDF, so forth.
So it doesn't look like there's any other questions coming in. I know we're about at our hour.
It is literally, it's like a small fraction, but I did see, will there be a standalone comparison app or only the word Addin? So there still is a standalone comparison app, and from a review perspective, it's there. That's the way that it's done today. We do try to move towards add-ins as well, where there's extensibility. It's part of the Word workflow or Outlook workflow. So I think the answer to that is both, and it's just in an effort to solve a variety of different scenarios and use cases. We're trying to reduce the amount of times that someone needs to open up an application or click or locally save something and so forth. So those integration points should exist everywhere, but that core application should still be available and will still be available. And I don't think there's anything else, but it is literally a quarter of an inch for me to be able to see.
You can pull that. I couldn't read it either. You got to pull it away from the task pane to be able to read anything in there. Anyway, I don't see any other questions coming in. Obviously, if people think of other questions, feel free to contact Lettera. Most of the names I can see here are, Matt and I have talked to, so feel free to reach out to us directly. What I will say is, who would like to win a $100 gift card? I'm assuming everybody's raising their hand. So as part of the follow-up to this webinar, our marketing department is going to be sending you an email asking if you would sign up to either have a conversation with Lettera or to see a demo of some of the stuff we were talking about. If you move forward with setting up a conversation or moving forward with a demo, you'll receive a $100 Amazon gift card. Sounds like there's some interest in Lettera Review and Addin Manager. Be a quick way to win $100 from us. So do look out for that marketing email and that promotion. With that, we appreciate everybody's time today. Again, if you have any questions on anything we covered or anything we didn't cover, please let us know. Have a great Wednesday, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks all.